Hello, everyone, and a very warm welcome back to another episode of Daily English Dialogues. I'm your host, Kore, and I am absolutely thrilled to be sitting across the table from my good friend and colleague, Orus. How are you holding up today, Orus?
I'm doing fantastic, Corey. Although I must admit, even after doing so many of these episodes, I still get a tiny bit of those butterflies in my stomach right before we hit the record button. Does that ever happen to you?
Every single time. And it's actually quite fitting that you mention that because it ties directly into our theme for today. We aren't just talking about grammar or vocabulary in a vacuum. We're talking about something deeply human. Today, we are exploring the world of social anxiety.
It's a heavy hitter, isn't it? It's one of those topics that hits close to home for a lot of people. Whether you're a native speaker or someone working hard to master English as a second language, the feeling of being on display can be quite overwhelming.
On display. I love that phrasing. It captures the essence of social anxiety perfectly. It's that sensation that you aren't just a person in a room, but an exhibit in a museum, and everyone is looking for a crack in the glass. For our listeners at the B1 and B2 levels, on display is a great idiom to describe feeling watched or scrutinized.
Precisely. And for our audience on YouTube, we want to start by saying that if you've ever felt this way, you are in good company. In this episode, we're going to peel back the layers of this topic. We'll look at the vocabulary of fear, the phrases we use to describe our social lives, and the advanced adjectives that help us pinpoint exactly how we feel.
Before we dive into the deep end, Orus, let's set the scene for our listeners. Imagine you've been invited to a high-profile networking event. There's soft jazz playing, people are dressed in business casual attire, and the room is humming with the sound of 100 different conversations. What does that environment do to your internal state?
Oh man, just the description alone makes my heart rate tick up a little bit. For someone with a tendency towards social anxiety, that hum of conversation doesn't sound like a party. It sounds like a challenge. You start wondering, who do I talk to first? Is my tie straight? Do I look approachable, or do I look like I'm looking for the nearest exit?
Approachable. There's another top-tier word for our learners. If you are approachable, it means you look friendly and easy to talk to. But the irony of social anxiety is that the more we worry about being approachable, the more rigid or stiff we often become because we are overthinking our body language.
That's the paradox, isn't it? You want to blend in, but your fear of standing out makes you act in a way that feels unnatural. I remember back in university, I used to rehearse my small talk in the mirror before going to a mixer. I'd practice saying, "Hi, I'm Orus. I study linguistics," about 50 times.
I did the same thing. I'd even try to predict the follow-up questions. What if they ask me what I think about the current economic climate? I need to have a sophisticated opinion ready. It's exhausting, isn't it? This mental rehearsal is a hallmark of the social anxiety experience.
It really is. And that's what we want to unpack today. We're going to talk about the difference between being a wallflower, someone who is shy and stays on the edges of a party, and having a clinical level of anxiety that actually prevents you from living the life you want.
We'll also be touching on the cultural side of things. In some cultures, being quiet is seen as a sign of respect or wisdom. In others, especially in many English-speaking Western cultures, there's a huge premium placed on being extroverted and outgoing. That can add an extra layer of pressure for English learners who are trying to adapt to a new social environment.
That is such a profound point, Corey. Learning a language isn't just about the words, it's about the social script that goes with it. When you're struggling to find the right conjugation of a verb, and you're also worrying about whether you're being too loud or too quiet, it's a lot for the brain to handle.
It truly is cognitive overload. So grab a cup of tea or coffee or whatever your beverage of choice is and settle in. We've got a long journey ahead of us in this conversation. We're going to break this down into several parts, everything from the physical symptoms to the digital pressure of social media, and finally, some strategies to help you feel more at ease.
At ease, meaning relaxed and comfortable. That's the goal for all of us, isn't it? To move through the world with a sense of belonging rather than a sense of intrusion.
Beautifully put. So let's get started. Orus, let's move into the definitions. How do we actually draw the line between just being a bit nervous and having what we call social anxiety?
You're absolutely right to point that out, Corey. In English, we often use words loosely, but if we want to be precise, especially for our B2 learners, we need to look at the intensity and the impact. Think of shyness as a soft trait. It's a bit of initial hesitation. You know the type, the person who sits quietly at the start of a dinner party, observing everyone, and then by the time dessert is served, they're laughing and telling stories.
Right. For a shy person, the ice-breaking period is just a bit longer. Once the ice is broken, the discomfort generally evaporates. But for someone grappling with social anxiety, the ice doesn't just melt, does it? It feels like they're walking on a frozen lake that could crack at any second, even hours into the event.
That is a brilliant metaphor. Social anxiety, or a social anxiety disorder, to use the clinical term, is much more pervasive. It's an all-encompassing feeling. While shyness might be a personality quirk, social anxiety is characterized by a disproportionate fear. The level of fear doesn't actually match the threat of the situation.
Disproportionate. That's a sophisticated word. It means something is out of scale. For example, if I drop my fork and my heart starts pounding like I've just escaped a lion, that is a disproportionate reaction.
Exactly. And let's talk about the internal monologue that accompanies this. A shy person might think, I don't have much to say right now. An anxious person is thinking, if I speak, they will see my voice trembling, they will realize I'm a fraud, and they will never invite me back. It's much more catastrophic.
Catastrophizing. We should definitely highlight that term. It's when the brain jumps to the absolute worst case scenario. It's not just they might not like me, it's this one awkward interaction will ruin my entire professional reputation and I'll end up alone. It sounds dramatic when we say it out loud, but in the moment, it feels like an absolute certainty.
It's the certainty that makes it so painful. And there's another layer here, the avoidance factor. A shy person might feel uncomfortable, but they'll usually show up to the party anyway. Someone with social anxiety might find the prospect so daunting that they start flaking on their friends.
Flaking. That's a great piece of informal English for our listeners. To flake on someone means to cancel plans at the last minute, often because you're feeling overwhelmed or just can't bring yourself to go.
And the tragedy of flaking is the shame spiral that follows. You feel relieved for 5 minutes because you don't have to face the social situation, but then you spend the rest of the night berating yourself for being weak or weird.
Berating yourself, meaning to criticize or scold yourself harshly. It's that harsh inner critic we all have, but for the socially anxious, that critic has a megaphone. It's interesting, Orus, because I've met people who are high-functioning extroverts, people who seem very bubbly and talkative, who actually suffer from intense social anxiety. It's like they're overcompensating.
Oh, I've definitely seen that. We call it masking. They put on a persona of confidence. On the outside, they look like the life of the party, but internally, they are performing a monumental amount of mental labor to keep that mask from slipping. They are analyzing every nuance of the other person's facial expressions.
Nuance, a subtle difference in meaning, expression, or sound. If you're hyper-focused on nuances, you might misinterpret a simple yawn as a sign that you are incredibly boring, rather than thinking, oh, that person probably didn't sleep well last night.
That's the cognitive distortion right there. Social anxiety makes you the center of a very negative universe. You assume everything that happens is a reaction to you. If the conversation hits a lull, a temporary period of silence, the anxious person feels personally responsible for fixing it.
Lull, L-U-L-L. Such a short word, but such a scary concept for some. I used to fear lulls so much that I would just keep talking and talking, often saying things I later regretted, just to avoid even 3 seconds of silence.
It's the dread of the silence. But in reality, silence is a natural part of human interaction. It gives people time to process. So to summarize this part for our listeners, shyness is a temperament, whereas social anxiety is a barrier. One is a quiet room, the other is a locked door.
A locked door that we are going to try and find the keys for today. I think it's also important to mention that you can be introverted without being shy or anxious. An introvert might just prefer their own company because they find social interaction draining, not because they are afraid of it.
Total distinction. Introverts need solitude to recharge their batteries. Anxious people might want to be social. They might be yearning for connection, but they feel inhibited by their fear.
Yearning for connection. That's a very poetic way to put it, Orus. It captures the loneliness that often accompanies this condition. You want to reach out, but your hands feel tied by invisible threads of worry.
And those threads can be very thick indeed.
It's one thing to talk about the thoughts in our heads, but social anxiety isn't just a mental game, is it? It's a full body experience. I remember reading once that the brain doesn't distinguish between a social threat, like being laughed at, and a physical threat, like being chased by a predator.
That is biologically spot on. When you feel that apprehension, your sympathetic nervous system kicks into high gear. It's the fight, flight, or freeze response. Your body is essentially preparing for a battle that isn't happening. Have you ever felt that tightness in your chest right before you have to introduce yourself in a circle?
Oh, absolutely. It's like my lungs suddenly decide they only want to take shallow breaths. And then there's the visceral reaction in the stomach. People often call it butterflies, but when it's anxiety, it feels more like a swarm of bees.
Visceral, what a fantastic word for our listeners. It refers to a deep, internal, inward feeling. And let's not forget the telltale signs. For some, it's perspiration, sweaty palms, or a damp forehead. For others, it's erythema, which is the medical term for blushing or flushing.
Blushing is the worst for someone with social anxiety because it's a visible symptom of an invisible fear. You feel your cheeks getting hot, and then you start worrying that people can see you blushing, which makes you blush even more. It's a vicious cycle.
It really is. You're hyper-fixated on your own body. You think, are my hands shaking? Can they hear my voice trembling? Do I look as terrified as I feel? And this leads us perfectly into that psychological concept we mentioned earlier, the spotlight effect.
I love this concept because it's so eye-opening. For our B2 learners, the spotlight effect is the tendency to overestimate how much others notice our appearance or behavior. We feel like there is a literal spotlight following us around, illuminating every stumble or clumsy word.
There was a famous study about this involving a very conspicuous t-shirt. I think it had a picture of Barry Manilow on it. The person wearing it was convinced everyone was judging them, but when the researchers asked the people in the room, hardly anyone had even noticed what was on the shirt.
That is so reassuring, isn't it? We are the protagonists of our own lives, so we assume we are the protagonists of everyone else's life too. But in reality, everyone else is also under their own imaginary spotlight, worrying about their own blemishes or social gaffes.
Gaffes. That's Gaffes. It means a social blunder or a mistake. We all make them. But the cognitive distortion here is that we think our gaffes are memorable to others. In truth, most people will forget your slip of the tongue within 30 seconds because they are too busy thinking about what they are going to say next.
It's a bit of a paradox. We feel isolated by our anxiety, yet that anxiety is actually fueled by a very self-centered view of the world, not in a selfish way, but in a perceptual way. We think we are more important to strangers than we actually are.
Exactly. If you spill a tiny bit of water on your shirt, you might want to evaporate on the spot. You think everyone sees the stain, they think I'm messy. But most people just see a person holding a glass. They don't scrutinize you the way you scrutinize yourself.
Scrutinize, to examine something very closely and critically. That's exactly what social anxiety does. It turns us into our own most harsh inspectors.
And when you combine that internal scrutiny with the physical symptoms, the racing heart, the clammy hands, it creates a feedback loop. Your brain feels the heart racing and says, see, we really are in danger. We should stay quiet to stay safe.
Which ironically makes us feel more awkward. It's a formidable challenge to overcome. But I think just internalizing the idea of the spotlight effect, really believing that people aren't watching you that closely, is the first step toward liberation.
It's about shifting the gaze outward. Instead of looking inward at your racing heart, try looking outward at the color of the walls, or really listening to the cadence of the other person's voice.
Cadence, the rise and fall of the voice in speaking. That's a beautiful word to end this segment on. If we focus on the cadence of the conversation rather than the thumping of our own pulse, the spotlight starts to dim a little.
That is the million-dollar question, Cora. On one hand, the internet provides a buffer. You have time to craft the perfect response, to use emojis to convey tone, and to edit your photos until they look flawless. But that buffer is a double-edged sword.
A double-edged sword, meaning it has both favorable and unfavorable consequences. How so?
Well, because we spend so much time curating our online personas, the gap between our digital self and our authentic self grows wider. This creates a new kind of anxiety, the fear that if people meet us in person, they will be disappointed because we aren't as witty or as polished as our Instagram profile suggests.
That is a very modern burden to carry. We've moved from the spotlight effect in a room to the global spotlight. And then there is the pervasive nature of social comparison. We aren't just comparing our insides to our neighbors' outsides anymore. We're comparing our messy, real lives to the highlight reels of influencers and celebrities.
Highlight reels. I love that term. It refers to the best moments of someone's life, carefully selected and edited. When you're scrolling through your feed at 11 p.m., feeling a bit lonely, and you see a group of friends laughing at a beach bonfire, your brain doesn't think they probably had to take 30 photos to get that one perfect shot.
No, your brain thinks everyone is having a seamless social life except for me. This triggers FOMO, the fear of missing out. But for the socially anxious, it's often coupled with PHOBO, the fear of being outcasted. You see the party and you think, I wasn't invited because I'm inherently unlikable.
Inherently unlikable. That's a very heavy thought. And the digital age provides metrics for our social worth now. Likes, comments, shares, scene receipts. These are all data points that an anxious mind can use to torture itself. If someone leaves you on read, meaning they've seen your message but haven't replied, an anxious person doesn't think, oh, they must be busy.
Exactly. They think, I must have said something offensive or tedious. They are ghosting me because they finally realized I'm not worth talking to. The lack of nonverbal cues in digital communication, no eye contact, no tone of voice, leaves too much room for maladaptive interpretation.
Maladaptive, another great word. It means not adjusting adequately or appropriately to an environment or situation. Our brains are trying to solve a puzzle with half the pieces missing. In a face-to-face talk, I can see you smiling, so I know we're on the same page. In a text thread, a period at the end of a sentence can feel like a cold or aggressive gesture.
It's true. A simple okay versus okay can send someone with social anxiety into a 2-hour downward spiral of analysis. Why the period? Are they mad? Is the tone curt?
Curt, C-U-R-T. It means rudely brief or abrupt. It's amazing how much emotional weight we put into punctuation these days. But let's also talk about Zoom fatigue and the pressure of video calls. In many ways, video calls are the ultimate nightmare for social anxiety because you are forced to look at your own face while you talk.
It's like having a mirror held up to you during a first date. You become hyper-aware of your expressions. Is my head tilted weirdly? Do I look tired? It's that spotlight effect again, but this time the spotlight is a self-view window in the corner of your screen.
It's exhausting because your brain is performing double duty. You're trying to process what the other person is saying, and you're also monitoring your own performance in real time. It's no wonder people feel drained after a day of virtual meetings.
So the digital age has given us unprecedented connectivity, but it has also amplified the scrutiny we feel. We've traded the occasional anxiety of a party for the constant anxiety of a smartphone.
It's a trade-off we didn't necessarily sign up for, but understanding these digital pitfalls is the first step towards reclaiming our peace of mind. We have to remind ourselves that digital life is a distortion, not a reflection of reality.
A distortion. That's a perfect way to summarize it. It's like looking into a funhouse mirror and getting upset that the image looks warped.
It's time to talk about the remedies. The most powerful tool in the modern psychological arsenal is cognitive behavioral therapy, or CBT. And at the heart of CBT is a concept called cognitive reframing.
Reframing. I love that word. It's like taking a picture out of a dark, ugly frame and putting it into a bright, elegant one. The picture stays the same, but the way you perceive it changes entirely.
That's a perfect analogy. In the context of anxiety, reframing is the process of identifying distorted thoughts and disputing them. You see, an anxious mind is like a lawyer who is only presenting evidence against you. Reframing is like hiring a defense attorney for your own brain.
I definitely need a better defense attorney in my head. So how does it work in practice? Let's say I'm walking into a networking event and my brain says, you're going to bore everyone you talk to.
Okay, that's a classic negative thought. Step 1 is to catch it. Don't just let it pass through. Interrogate it. Ask yourself, is it a fact that I am boring? Have I ever had a conversation where the other person seemed interested?
Well, yes, I have. But my brain might counter-argue and say they were just being polite.
And that's where you have to look for cognitive errors. In that case, you're mind reading. You're assuming you know what they're thinking without any actual evidence. A reframe would be, I don't have to be the most entertaining person in the room. My goal is just to be present and curious.
Present and curious. That takes the pressure off performance, doesn't it? If I'm curious about the other person, I'm not focusing on whether I'm boring. I'm focusing on whether they are interesting. It's a paradigm shift.
Paradigm shift, meaning a fundamental change in approach or underlying assumptions. Exactly. Another great technique is decatastrophizing. We talked about those what-if scenarios,
To decatastrophize, you actually follow the what if to its conclusion.
So if I think, what if I trip and fall in front of everyone, I should actually play that scenario out?
Yes, what would happen? You'd fall, maybe someone would help you up, you'd blush for a few minutes, and by tomorrow, it would be a funny anecdote. It wouldn't be the end of your life. When you vocalize the fear, it often loses its potency.
Potency, meaning power or influence. I find that writing these thoughts down helps too. Seeing a fear written on paper makes it look a bit absurd compared to how it feels when it's rattling around in your skull.
Definitely. And for the physical side, we have to talk about grounding. When the physical symptoms, the racing heart and the shortness of breath start to escalate, you need to bring your awareness back to the here and now.
Is that where the 3-3-3 rule comes in?
Precisely. For our listeners who might have missed it, you name 3 things you see, 3 things you hear, and move 3 parts of your body, like wiggling your toes or rotating your ankles. It diverts the brain's attention away from the internal panic and back to the external environment.
It's a distraction technique, but a very intentional one. I also find box breathing incredibly helpful. You breathe in for 4 seconds, hold for 4, exhale for 4, and hold for 4. It sends a physiological signal to your brain that says, hey, we aren't actually being chased by a tiger. You can stand down.
It's about reclaiming the remote control of your nervous system, but we have to be consistent. You wouldn't expect to go to the gym once and come out with bulking muscles. These mental exercises are the same. You have to practice them when you're calm so they are available to you when you're triggered.
Triggered, meaning having a strong emotional reaction to something. That's a key point. You can't learn to swim while you're drowning. You have to practice these techniques in low-stress situations first.
And lastly, I want to mention self-compassion. We are often so ruthless with ourselves. We say things to ourselves that we would never say to a friend. If your friend told you they were nervous about a party, you'd say, "You'll be fine, you're great." Why not say that to yourself?
We are our own toughest critics. Learning to be a supportive coach instead of a mean boss is perhaps the most transformative coping mechanism of all.
Transformative. It truly changes the landscape of your mind.
That idea of being a supportive coach leads us perfectly into our next topic, which is exposure. Now, Orus, for many people, the word exposure sounds a bit like being thrown into a shark tank. But in psychology, it's a much more methodical and systematic process, right?
Exactly. We aren't talking about flooding, which is when you dive headfirst into your biggest fear. That can actually be counterproductive and make the anxiety worse. We're talking about gradual exposure. Think of it like a ladder. You don't jump to the top rung immediately. You start at the bottom and slowly acclimatize to the height.
Acclimatize. That's a fantastic word. It means to get used to a new climate or new conditions. So if someone is terrified of public speaking, their bottom rung might not even involve speaking at all.
Precisely. Maybe the first step is just sitting in the front row of a lecture hall. The next step might be asking one question at the end of a seminar. Then maybe a 2-minute presentation to a group of friends. You're building tolerance to the discomfort.
It's about habituation, isn't it? That's the scientific term for when our brains stop reacting to a stimulus because it has become familiar. It's like when you first jump into a cold swimming pool. It's jolting at first, but after 10 minutes, your body adjusts and it feels refreshing.
That's a perfect illustration. But there's a catch with exposure that we have to mention: safety behaviors. These are the subtle things we do to protect ourselves while we're in a social situation, but they actually prevent habituation from happening.
Wait, give me some examples of these safety behaviors. I think I might be guilty of some of these without realizing it.
We all are. Common ones include staying on your phone the whole time so you look busy, hovering near the food table so you have an excuse not to talk, or only talking to the one person you already know.
Oh, I've definitely used the phone shield before. It's like a digital security blanket. But why are these behaviors detrimental to our progress?
Detrimental, meaning harmful or damaging. They're harmful because your brain doesn't learn that the situation is safe. It learns that you only survived because you had your phone or because you stayed in the corner. You're reinforcing the idea that the world is a dangerous place.
That is a revelation. So true exposure means going into the situation unarmed, without your safety behaviors, so your brain can see that you can handle the vulnerability and still be okay.
Exactly. It's about leaning into the awkwardness. I often tell people to try purposeful mistakes. Go to a coffee shop and accidentally ask for a menu item they don't have, or drop your pen in a quiet library.
That sounds like my literal nightmare, Orus. Why on earth would I do that on purpose?
Because it teaches you that the consequences of a social blunder are almost zero. No one gets angry, the world doesn't stop spinning, and usually people are just indifferent. When you realize that you can survive a mistake, the fear of making one loses its stranglehold on you.
Stranglehold. What a powerful metaphor. It really does feel like a grip around your neck. So by testing the waters with these small intentional errors, we're actually reclaiming our freedom.
It's about empirical evidence. Your anxiety tells you a story, and exposure is the process of fact-checking that story. My anxiety said I would die of embarrassment if I tripped, but I tripped and 3 people offered to help me. The story was wrong.
This is why I think it's helpful to create a fear hierarchy or a social ladder. You list all your social fears from 1 to 10. Number 1 might be making eye contact with the mailman, and number 10 might be giving a toast at a wedding.
And you work your way up. You don't move to level 5 until level 4 feels manageable. It's a marathon, not a sprint. You have to be tenacious.
Tenacious, meaning persistent and determined. It's not about being fearless, it's about being brave. Fearlessness is the absence of fear, but bravery is feeling the fear and proceeding anyway.
That's a profound distinction. Courage is a muscle, and exposure is the weightlifting that makes it stronger. Every time you stay in a conversation 5 minutes longer than you wanted to, you're leveling up.
I love that gaming terminology. It makes the process feel more like an adventure and less like a chore. We've talked a lot about the individual struggle, but we don't live in a vacuum. Most of us have friends or family members who might be going through this. Orus, how can someone be an ally to a friend with social anxiety without being overbearing?
Overbearing, meaning unpleasantly overpowering. That's a common mistake. People often try to fix their friends by dragging them into social situations. They think tough love is the answer. Come on, Corey, just get out there and mingle. You'll have fun.
That usually just makes me want to retreat even further into my shell. It feels like my feelings are being dismissed.
Exactly. The best thing you can do is validation. Acknowledge that their fear is real to them, even if it doesn't seem logical to you. Instead of saying, don't be nervous, try saying, I can see you're feeling a bit apprehensive, and that's okay. I'm right here with you.
That feels so much lighter. It's also helpful when friends offer low-stakes social activities. If a big party is too much, maybe suggest a one-on-one walk in a quiet park or a movie night at home.
Low stakes, meaning not much is at risk. It builds that comfort level we were talking about earlier. And another thing, don't infantilize them. Just because someone has social anxiety doesn't mean they are incapable or fragile. They are just dealing with a glitchy alarm system in their brain.
Infantilize, meaning to treat someone like a child. That's a great B2 word. It's so important to treat our anxious friends with dignity. They are often some of the most perceptive and empathetic people because they spend so much time observing others.
That's the silver lining of social anxiety. Many people who struggle with it are actually highly attuned to the emotions of others. They just need help calibrating that attunement so it doesn't overwhelm them.
Well, Orus, we have covered a vast amount of ground today, from the spotlight effect to the social ladder and the digital distortion. I feel like I've learned a lot just by recapping these concepts with you.
Me too, Corey. It's a journey, not a destination. If our listeners take away only one thing today, I hope it's this. Your value as a human being is not contingent on how charismatic you are in a crowded room.
Contingent, meaning dependent on something. What a powerful note to end on. You are worthy of connection and belonging, exactly as you are, jitters and all.
Jitters. That's a fun, informal word for nervousness. We all have them. So to everyone listening on Daily English Dialogues, thank you for letting us be part of your day. We hope this conversation has given you some food for thought and some practical vocabulary to describe your own experiences.
Don't forget to check the description box for a list of the advanced words we use today. And if you have a story about how you conquered a social fear, please share it in the comments. We'd love to hear from you.
It's a community after all. Until next time, keep practicing, keep venturing out, and remember to be kind to yourself.
Goodbye, everyone.
Bye-bye.